there, folks, and welcome to this Life Without Limits. I'm your host, Weston McWhorter, and on today's episode, I'm going to introduce you to my cancer. Now, if you've been around this podcast for any period of time, you know it's been a long time since I've done a solo episode. You got to go all the way back to the summer of 2020, really when this podcast got started. And it was just me and my iPhone and a little Shure microphone adapter trying to capture the best audio quality I could. And since then I've had, a number of really great conversations over the years with friends and colleagues and folks that I've been really inspired by. It's been beautiful. But I wanted to jump on here because I'm in a real moment of transition in my life, and to speak to you, and talk about this diagnosis, this treatment that I'm undergoing currently, and to perhaps just shed a little bit of light on some opportunities for growth through this process for me personally, and then to also just share the story out into the world in hopes that it may find a home with someone else and encourage them and give them support that they may need as well. So I don't really have a hard, fast agenda for today. It's going to be a little bit of freestyling. I do have an outline that I put together. So hopefully once this is all edited, it'll come out, nice and smooth, and coherent. But yeah, so cancer. I think we'll just start out with this journey to diagnosis, right? So, briefly, I'll just say that, last fall, let me just start that part again. So I've always had this idea that I'm a pretty healthy person, right? And in fact, if I'm honest, I take my health for granted. 52 years old. I'm, an endurance athlete. I can probably get on my bike this afternoon and go out and ride 75 miles. It might hurt a little bit. But I've always had this like residual, healthy, full, vibrant kind of body and life. And so because of that, I, kind of bypass a lot of things that, might show up in my health profile as just, something that'll pass. And so just kind of like talking about, the journey to this diagnosis. I, back in October, noticed that for whatever reason, I was looking in my throat one night, and I noticed that there was a kind of a piece of my tonsil, my right tonsil, that looked like it was bruised and kind of bloody. And because, I'm curious, I kind of like grabbed a Q-tip and was kind of like trying to mess with it back there, and part of it fell off into my hand. And so there's like a little piece of like tonsil flesh, like red tonsil flesh in my hand that, honestly, I looked at it, I was like, well, that's weird. It kind of bled a little bit and then stopped, but I didn't really think too much more of it. That's, pretty typical of me. So I just tossed the tonsil bit in the trash and rinsed my throat out and kind of went about my day. And then, flash forward a couple of months into December, my family was heading down to Texas for the holidays to see my folks down there. And I noticed just in, my own kind of like awareness of my body that I started having a little bit of a swelling over in the right side of my neck. So I thought, well, maybe I'm, got swollen tonsil. There wasn't really any pain or anything like that. But as, so I kind of went through the holidays, didn't really pay any much attention to it. And another month goes by, and I'm noticing that, it's kind of growing a little bit. And it doesn't feel like it's my tonsil, it feels like it's, something else over in my neck. And I was down in Asheville with my partner leading a workshop, and one of the participants at the end of the workshop came up to me, and I knew this about his story, that he had had cancer, head and neck cancer at some point in his life. And he just came up to me and he was like, "Hey man, just, kind of pulled me aside and was like, 'What's going on here? I just noticed this on your neck.'" And I said, "Yeah, it's been growing over the last, month or so. And I've got some appointments that I have scheduled. I finally scheduled a doctor appointment to go see an ENT and get it looked at." And he was like, "Great, good, get that done as soon as you get home." And so we wrapped up that trip, got back up to DC, and kind of began, this was February, kind of began to go and see, like, first a primary care physician. She looked at it. She was concerned, looked at my throat. She's like, "I don't really see anything back in there, but this is concerning. Let me give you a referral to an ENT." And I was like, "Well, okay, I've had some people that have been recommended." So I went to go see an ENT. The first one I saw, she kind of like stuck a scope down my nose and took a look around and, looked at my ears and kind of felt, my neck and things like that. And she was like, "No pain. I don't really see anything going on in there." And I was like, "Okay, well, what do we think here?" And she's like, "Well, I'm going to refer you to one of her colleagues who was really a head and neck cancer specialist, and particularly around this type of presentation of cancer." And I'm like, "Wow, okay, well," kind of gave me pause. So in the meantime, I went and had a couple of scans done. I had a CT scan done, I had an MRI done, I had a fine needle biopsy done. And particularly the biopsy, like, they really went in there with a needle and tried to, like, grab a whole bunch of tissue out of the lymph node. And the results came back, like a week later as non-diagnostic, and what that means isn't, it doesn't mean you don't have cancer. It just means that they can't determine anything from that tissue sample, right? So, and what at least one lesson that I'm learning through this whole process is that, words matter, language matters, context matters. And so I was, frankly, when I got that news, my partner and I were driving downtown somewhere in DC. We're listening to the voicemail over the speaker and kind of high-fiving each other, like, "Oh, I don't have cancer, man. It's great. It's awesome." So this was probably March. And, so we're kind of like in this little limbo period. And I should also tell you, because I feel like this is relevant to the story, is that, I, after the COVID pandemic got going, I was laid off from like regular employment, like W-2 work, benefits type of work. And so again, everybody knows in America that the healthcare system is pretty raggedy, to say the least. But I just did not prioritize getting insurance for myself. My children are insured through their mother's insurance and they're all taken care of. But I was like, fuck it. I'm healthy. I look good. I don't need insurance. Like, I'm fine. So this carried on basically from 2020 until this year. So all these tests are like coming out of pocket, and I'm like, holy shit, like $700 here, $400 there, and I'm like, this is not great, and in the back of my mind, I'm starting to kind of like formulate the worst case scenario of like, oh my God, if I actually do have cancer, like how is this going to work, so anyway, I get the MRIs done, I get the CTs done, I get the fine needle biopsies done, and I go and see this ENT at Georgetown, Dr. Girantano. Give him a shout out because he's an incredible dude, and was with us really early on in this process. And he was like, "Well, look, man, I've seen all these results, and I just want to tell you that there's a particular type of head and neck cancer that has begun to present in this way, where you'll see like swollen lymph nodes, no real other symptoms. Like I had zero symptoms, other than this lymph node like bugging out. And he said, what I like to do is a specific blood test on you that tests for HPV. I was like, HPV? I was like, you mean you're talking about like the sexually transmitted infection? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, dude, I get tested like regularly. I mean, the last time I got tested was like a year ago and everything was clean. He's like, well, unfortunately, like there's no test or scan for this particular type of infection. And I was like, okay. So, and he said, really the only way for us to tell this is like if we draw some blood, and if there is HPV DNA in your blood, then that's a really good indicator that what we're looking at is, some sort of HPV related cancer. So I was like, okay, let's do that, and this was probably, I think this was probably late March. I say all this because, there's some context, but this was in late March, and my son and my partner and I had planned a trip down to Costa Rica for his spring break and also his 16th birthday. So, this is like early April, mid-April. We've done the blood draw back in Georgetown, waiting for the results, go down to Costa Rica, having a little bit of fun, and, get the message from our doctor that, hey, this test has come back positive for like highly positive for HPV. And I want to talk to you guys as soon as you're back from vacation. And of course, we're like, that turns the whole trip into, really like a reflection of, wow, what are we about to get into here? Right. I might have cancer. I don't have insurance. Really, like, what the fuck is going to happen next? So we get back from that trip and go and see the doctor. And he's like, yeah, man, I'm not going to, I can't diagnose you with cancer, but like my opinion, this is my first opinion, is that this is what you got. This is what we're looking at. And this is how I would treat it. Right. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the next piece, but what's really kind of like relevant here is that, I was pretty afraid, right? Overall, pretty overwhelmed by the prospect of facing this disease and basically having no financial means to do so. For those of you that know my story, that I've been on this real journey since 2018, basically, of recovery in all aspects of my life. So, we started looking at like having calls with people in Mexico, having calls with people in India, like where could we go to like get this done? And I still don't actually know how this all transpired, but this is so typical of me, as I'm remembering it now, like I filed my taxes on time this year. And a couple of weeks later, I got a letter from the state of Maryland, and I didn't open it. Sometimes I do this shit. I just like set stuff aside that like I'm, working through like denial issues about things. So I set this letter aside for probably about a week or so. I finally opened it up. And in that letter, it said, you have like some special circumstances, a special window here to apply for insurance through the state of Maryland. And I mean, basically like healthcare.gov type stuff. And I've been looking at all of that, and frankly, it's like, I mean, insurance is expensive. Like, I don't have to tell anybody in America that that's the truth, Um, and me being in the position I'm in, just have not prioritized it, So I looked at healthcare.gov. I got all my friends like, go on the open market, go get insurance, this, that, and the other thing. And the problem was I was outside the open enrollment period. This is April, right? April and May. Open enrollment isn't until the fall. So I just was like, yeah, I'm looking at it. I'm ready to do it. I just can't. Like, there's no exceptions, So lo and behold, though, I opened this letter, and that letter said, you've got an opportunity to get insurance here. And so, um, I mean, I was pretty, I don't know. I was floored, right? Like, this was an incredible opportunity, an incredible gift. Again, I don't know really why I qualified for it, but I did. So we got, I applied for insurance. I got an insurance that I can afford. It's pretty decent. The deductible is manageable. The out of pocket costs are, what they are. And, um, but most of all, it would allow me to like get into treatment like immediately, and um, so the first thing I did was basically talk to Dr. G and say, yo, thank you for this opinion. I'm going to go see if I can get a second opinion. He's like, totally, go do it. And so I did. I went to Johns Hopkins and in Baltimore, and went through a whole like rigmarole and work up with those guys. Um, and they said, basically, I met with a surgeon. She was like, yeah, looks like that's what you got. I'm reviewing all your paperwork. Her opinion, she's a little bit of a rock star over there. Her opinion was like, I can go right in there. I'm gonna cut that out. You're going to be done, good to go. And I was like, wow, okay. Like, my other doctor said, don't do surgery because the tumor is so close to my carotid artery that I might like bleed out in surgery. So I was like, are you sure you feel like you can do that? And she's like, I got you. And I'm like, okay. So, so I meet with her. I meet with the medical oncologist. We spoke a little bit about an immunotherapy trial specifically for HPV-related cancer that Johns Hopkins has going underway as a possibility, treatment possibility. I met with the radiologist over there. He kind of described the plan, again, like in very broad strokes, right? Of like, this is how we would treat you. This is our assumption of what you have. And I mean, Johns Hopkins, Georgetown is an incredible hospital. Like, that whole facility is top notch, right? And Johns Hopkins in particular, like this team that I'm working with, they are like on the cutting edge of this particular type of cancer. And so I was excited to be with that group. And the, first thing that really we lined up, and this is, I mean, just kind of flash forward, like, this stuff doesn't happen. It happened, in my opinion, fast. It probably happened a little slower, like in my partner's opinion. It feels like maybe there's some delays and things like that. But one of the things that we needed was a confirmed diagnosis, right? So in July, and this is like the end of July, went in for a biopsy and had a couple of pieces of the tumor, or of my tonsil, removed, which was gnarly. First time I've ever been to surgery. So, but it went smooth. And a few days later, got the results back of the biopsy that, yeah, it is confirmed that I do have, the official diagnosis is HPV-related squamous cell carcinoma. So, and the way it's set up is that the initial tumor is in my right tonsil, and it's metastasized into this lymph node. There's a couple of other lymph nodes in my neck that they've been watching that, it feels like maybe there's been a little bit of spread to that. They're also looking at some lymph nodes down in my like collarbone area. Just suspicious, nothing that's really showing that it's spread there. But also they're seeing like an MRIs and a PET scan, like a little bit of spread into my soft palate, a little bit of spread into the base of my tongue. And so, um, so the staging for this cancer right now is somewhere between stage 2 and stage 3. So that's like the official diagnosis is, stage 2, 3 HPV positive squamous cell carcinoma. So that's a little bit about the journey up to, the diagnosis. Like, how did I get to, this point? Um, from there, we really started talking about what is the plan for treatment, right? And, you know, what I'm learning about, and again, having never really been in the medical system, right? I've never had surgery. I've never broken a bone. I've never like had any kind of like illness that has demanded my attention like this. Um, what I'm learning is that, it's a machine, right? Like there's a process, there's a standard of care, there is an approach to every type of cancer that is in a lot of ways like trusted and tested and, reasonably reliable, ideally. Um, and that's what comes forward really fast. As soon as you have this diagnosis, it's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. Um, these are the meds you're going to be on. This is how the process is going to roll out, and so it can be a little, not even, it can be a little, it is really shocking to kind of like have all of that thrown at you. It's overwhelming, frankly. And also, to take a step back and like really assess, like, how do I want this to go for me? Like what's my role in my journey through this treatment? What can I control, right? What's within my control? And so, one of the things that, and I'm not going to talk a lot here about supplementation and diet. That's something that I'll do a blog post about. But that was something that I felt like I could control, the environment inside of my body, creating like the most harmonious place for this treatment to really be effective. So, and other modalities too, right? Like acupuncture, body work, nutritional supplementation, some diet changes, nothing radical, but just intention, right? Bringing intention to how I'm treating my body. And so, so one of the things that felt a little frustrating, I mean, for me, it's, it's a little less, a little less sharp than for others that are, kind of close to this process with me. But, the surgeon, she backed away from her initial view that this would be an easy, I mean, it's not an easy surgery. It's, it would be a radical tonsillectomy, which is basically not only taking my tonsils out, but the tissue around the tonsil to create a margin around the tumor so that, it won't like leak out into other parts of my body. But, it's gnarly. Like that surgery is gnarly. And like the recovery from it is gnarly. And she was like, I don't think that's the best way to go. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm grateful that you backed away from that initial opinion of like, I'm gonna go right in there and cut it right out and you're gonna be good. Just for my safety, right? And also the best like long-term outcomes. So that was one thing. We met with the medical oncologist again, and his opinion was that I was not a good candidate for the immunotherapy trial either, which is kind of a bummer. I was I was really hoping that that would be a path that we could pursue. Um, it's really cutting edge. I love the idea of some kind of like collaboration between um, Western medicine and also like my own body's ability to heal itself. I love that idea, and creating that magic inside of me. But again, their opinion was like, the way that this cancer is set up and the stage that it's at, like we don't want to mess around, and I'm like, got it, like, okay. So you can probably, I mean, again, if you've ever like, if you've had cancer yourself, if you know someone who's had cancer, you know, we're slowly marching towards what's called a standard of care, right? And I'm always wanting to push the envelope, always be like, well, is there anything we can do like outside of this, to like change things a little bit? Um, so anyway, ultimately the answer was, here's how we're going to treat this. And it's going to be 7 weeks of chemotherapy and radiation. And the treatment schedule is basically, 5 days a week. I have radiation, and then 1 day a week I have a chemo infusion, and that's 6 hours sitting in a chair, getting chemo drugs. So that's ultimately where we landed. Is really like, um, taking this standard of care approach, uh, and with the idea that we not only we're not just treating this cancer, we're going to actually cure it. So really, I mean, you know, it's been a journey to balance that in my heart, in my spirit, in my body. Is it's like, you know, I'm going to have to go through a pretty arduous physical journey, in order to cure this and clear it from my body, and um so yeah, that is really like how we got from this initial presentation of the disease, back in October of last year, um, through all the initial like testing and trying to get diagnosed, finally get diagnosed, and finally like getting set up on the treatment plan. And so I just want to talk maybe for a moment a little bit about what I know about HPV related cancer, head and neck cancer in particular, which is not a ton. Like I'm actively learning about this, as I go, and frankly, I'm feeling really inspired to incorporate this obviously into not only my story, my message, my work going forward in the world, um, but to really be an advocate for how we get better at diagnosing this earlier, testing for it earlier, et cetera, um, so that people don't have to suffer, right? Like ultimately, I mean, I'll just tell you that like 7 weeks of having radiation blasted into my like throat and neck, um, is pretty gnarly prospect, and the chemo meds that I'm receiving, in particular, is called cisplatin, and it is a gnarly medicine. I've been all my nausea and pain and everything has been managed pretty well so far, but it's gnarly on your body. So anything we can do to avoid that would be great. So yeah, I'll just touch for a couple minutes on HPV related cancer. And so one of the things that I learned early on, as I'm kind of doing this research, especially like the kind of cognitive dissonance between like clean STD tests that I've had throughout my life, and then finding out that I have this STI, was pretty shocking, and I I asked the doctor about it, and he's like, look, man, he's like, you could have possibly been infected with this 30 years ago. And for whatever reason, your body didn't clear the virus. A lot of people's bodies clear this virus. He's like, but for whatever reason, your body didn't clear the virus. And this particular strain of HPV, it's HPV-16, is known over time to produce cervical cancer in women, right? That's typically where we see these things crop up. But of course, we know that there's like women have like yearly exams, pap smears, things like that to kind of early detect any possibility of cancer in the cervix. But for guys, there's no testing available for that. So he explained to me, he's like, dude, you could have, gotten this early on in your life and it's just hung around. And, I kind of laughed because there's, I kind of grew up I'm Gen X. I kind of grew up in the fight for your right to party generation. Did a lot of that in my 20s. And so it seems reasonable, that this could have been around for a long time, but, trying to like track that it's a rabbit hole you don't want to go down, because there's a lot of like, yeah, you just don't want to go down that hole, So anyway, but what has become, a little bit more clear in the last like couple of months is that there are a lot of men my age, a little bit older, a little bit younger, but in this generation who are presenting more and more frequently with head and neck cancers like this. Mentioned fight for your right to party. I was just watching a Beastie Boys documentary the other night and was reminded that Adam Yauch died of a salivary gland tumor, which is maybe not necessarily related to this, but it's head and neck. Who knows? This was 2012. There's been a lot of like research and things like that over the last couple of years to like sharpen the focus on what might cause these things. So we lose Adam Yauch in 2012 to head and neck cancer. Another celebrity that has struggled with this disease was Stanley Tucci. This was, I think, probably, back in like, again, like close to 2018, 2019, something like that. And his story is really well documented. And his journey was gnarly, from diagnosis to treatment to recovery. So that's another, person that's kind of in the cultural milieu that you might know about. And then, my own experience has been that like, since I came forward with this, there's been probably a half dozen men that have come forward, whether it's been on social media or, that just like through acquaintances that are like, oh man, my friend Brad just went through that, or my friend Chris just went through that, and this is how it went for him, and so, it's something that is really being paid attention to in the cancer world. There's a whole foundation set up for head and neck cancer that, I'll probably link to in the show notes or somewhere in my blog that really shines a light on these particular types of cancers. And I think the other thing that I just want to say is that, like, as I am now, a statistic, right? Like a cancer, I won't say a victim, but I have cancer in my body, right? That, every situation is different. Everybody's diagnosis is different. Everybody's body is different. The way people's bodies respond to treatment is different. It really is like a totally personal journey, and I'm so grateful to all the medical professionals that I've seen throughout the course of this journey, from my primary care physician, my first ENT, to the dude that like felt my neck up in Asheville back in February and was like, yo, what's going on here? To, my team at Georgetown and their, initial opinions, the team at Johns Hopkins, my radiation nurses, my oncology nurses. Like, I'm so grateful to everybody who is, not only like doing their job really well to take care of me, to give me the best care that they know how, but also holding space for me to have my own process and bring my own knowledge into this too, and my own learning. Because, ultimately, I think the real opportunity here, is to just practice self-advocacy, right? And I wanted to just kind of like maybe close out this episode, just talking about, what the opportunities are here for me, in terms of like transformation and embodiment, right? So again, like if you've if you followed this podcast, if you follow my journey since 2018, it's been a ride, a real ride. And um, this experience is one that I think has been given to me to really catalyze what I feel like is a big transition from what I would consider to be like a first adulthood into like my second adulthood, um, a passageway, a rite of passage, really. And this, this experience is filled with opportunities for um, deepening into self-acceptance, um, deepening into self-forgiveness, deepening into self-expression. Um, the way that I look at it in a lot of ways is like, as this cancer leaves my body over time, what is it taking with it, right? Um, I mean, just yeah, what's going, what's leaving, what's clearing out, and you know, what do I want to put into those spaces that are cleared? The pain, the resentment, the defensiveness, the anger, separation, all of the like, all of the the baggage, the burdens, spiritual, emotional, relational, financial, all of that that is built up over the last, 50 years of my life. When all that's cleared out, what's possible? Um, it's an incredible question to ask, right? And so, so that's one thing, that I feel like is available, is to really deepen into self-acceptance, self-forgiveness, self-expression, clear, like literally clearing everything, stripping everything away that doesn't serve my purpose in the world. There's also an incredible opportunity here to learn how to receive, right? Um, I have not been very good at that in my life. I'm really good at giving to others, pouring, 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 pouring. But it's been very hard for me to receive love, receive care, um, from anybody, and especially like this is old family stuff, the old childhood stuff, that is just like stuck, and then and then that metastasizes into all other kinds of relational difficulties, and we're in relationship with everything, right? We're in relationship with everything. And so there's a really beautiful opportunity here um, to really learn and really feel in my body deeply what it means to receive love from the universe in its infinite abundance. And yeah, I think really, the last thing that I want to say here, is that, when you hear something scary like this, I mean, it could be, you have cancer, or you're going to lose your job, or you're going to, fill in the blank, any kind of like wildly destabilizing event in your life. There's a real choice point in that to either abandon yourself, right, into fear, into doubt, into worthlessness, into like, who am I, into, this is never going to work out, like really just taking that path. Or, another option that we have is to really like stay in our bodies, like be with what is. So, my mantra through this process so far has just been really 3 words: trust, presence, and patience. And trying to really just be in the present moment, feel what I'm feeling in my body, not be carried away by what could be, and then to just love the shit out of myself, and give that same love to everybody that I'm coming into contact with, whether it's my children, my father, my mother, my siblings, my partner, my dog, my community, so I think, that's a pretty good setup for where I'm at right now. I really appreciate, you taking the time to listen to this episode. There are more that are going to be coming. I'm going to be doing weekly updates as this treatment goes on. And as this podcast evolves into 2025, there's going to be a lot changing in terms of, theme and content and topics and things like that. So I hope you'll stick around for this journey. I hope it's helpful. I'm going to share some links in the show notes for resources for people that may be currently in treatment, maybe in the process of getting diagnosed, maybe you don't know, maybe you just want some more information. I just want to be as helpful as I possibly can through this process. I'm also going to be posting some blogs on my website as well, other resources, things I've read, articles that may be helpful. Some, like, again, everybody's body is different, but maybe some nutritional and supplementation ideas. You can take or leave, whatever works for you. I'm no expert in that realm. But really my desire is to show up here as honestly and as vulnerably as I possibly can. I don't know, as this treatment goes on, I don't know how my voice is going to react. I don't know how my body is going to react, but I'm going to try and show up and at least do a weekly update. So anyway, I appreciate you joining me today for this intro. I hope it serves. I hope you all have an incredible day today. Be good to yourselves and be good to others. And we will see you back here very soon. Peace. That's it for this episode of This Life Without Limits. I hope you enjoyed this conversation and will join me again for future episodes. If you want to stay updated on new releases, hit the subscribe button below, and don't forget to check out the show notes for additional details and links. I'd also love to hear what you think about the content of this episode, so please feel welcome to drop any comments, thoughts, questions, critique, any of that below. Thanks again for joining me, and I look forward to next time.
Until then, here's to a life without limits, my friends.